Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm Shay Ryan Douglas. Today, I'm really excited. I've got Sovereign with me and, of course, Dr. David Martin. We've been preparing for this conversation for the last few weeks. And here he is. He's been instrumental over the last 18 months since everything has really started to unfold. But I'm really been inspired and admire the work that he's really stepped into with integrity, because he's really, what I've noticed is doing this for humanity, doing this for the greater good. And that is something of the conversation we really want to focus on today. Is this Future Dreaming, a film that David's been a part of, and what the awakening is, and how we can transition to this new narrative, this new story of what's possible for humankind in today's world. And before we get into that conversation, I just wanted to invite Sovereign just to share a piece on what has been the mycelium network of these interconnected webs that we've been so blessed to have these relationships with. And something that he's been working on with the Brave New Life community is fostering really empowering community. And it's a blessing to have David as a part of this community, and also Sovereign being that really connecting piece in here. So Sovereign, just quickly, do you want to just share, the connection point here and the work that you guys have done in the past last year, just instrumental in the movement that is, pioneering this space for humanity at this time?
So great. Thanks, Shay. And hi, David. So great to see you again.
Sovereign, good to see you. Shay, great to see you.
Nice. Yeah. It's been amazing to be in a position to be in a supportive role. I've just been gifted by grace this capacity to navigate digital landscapes and ecosystems and technology and how it all works. And it's been a beautiful ride, so to speak, to be in a seat where I can really offer support that can be really functional. And so I had the privilege to work with Kim for a little bit to just offer some, I call it hand-holding, because technology is just not always as easy to familiarize yourself with a whole new interface of a platform. And it's just been a total privilege for me to be able to support in a way that allows for a kind of graceful, continual activity to be possible. And if I only can contribute a little bit into that space, I've, through the Mastermind Brain Trust that Imani organized and gathered almost every Tuesday, there's just been so much opportunity for me to just step in, lean in a little bit to offer and offset some of that. Like, well, I don't know how it works. And that's just led into just beautiful relationships, because when we come in and we lean in with no expectation of a return, it allows other people to just see that, hey, this is a great space to operate in. And so I was quite instrumental in the Focus on Fauci event that was organized with Sasha Stone and with the Line in the Sand. And that was just a great opportunity to really actually go into the hard work that David has put into everything that he's done. And I was absolutely blown away, because I had front row seat, of course, in that live event. And that was really my turning point when all the evidence actually started becoming presented. So for me to be able to show up and be that connector through the personal relationships is just a privilege, and it's a beautiful gift that I'm very honored to carry. So grateful to be here.
Bless. Thanks, Sovereign. It's you have been instrumental in so many ways, and one of the most pioneering voices of our time, Dr. David Martin. You've really stepped into this role to help share truth, and be real about what's going on, particularly with a lot of the research that you've done through the technology that you've developed. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more in the uncensored chat. But David, I just wanted to thank you first and foremost, and also just invite you to share a little bit more on, this journey that you've been on over the last 18 months is probably exponentially grown to a point. But do you feel that your life has led you to this point and you've just naturally stepped into it, or you had been kind of preparing for this all along, and this has been your moment to really, serve humanity on a greater scope?
Well, it's a wonderful question, and I think it's worth just stepping into some of the linguistic assumptions that we make. For an enormous number of people, certainly in 2011, a number of people became aware of the work that I had done in 2001 when the alleged anthrax bioterror event took place. So for me, this is far from the first rodeo. It's actually, probably rodeo 5 or 6.0. And And so what's fascinating probably is unpacking a couple really interesting observations. First of all, is I wouldn't say I've done much research. I started watching this coronavirus manipulation and the bioweaponization of coronavirus from the very first patents and research grants that were started in 1999. And so the funny thing is, a lot of times I think we use the term research somewhat carelessly, and I really want to key in on something, which is I've just made observations over the last 21 years. The difference, and I think this is where that kind of interesting blurry space occurs. The difference is that when you know what to look for, it's easier to keep track of things. So if you actually know that there are people who are receiving tens or hundreds of millions of dollars of research to weaponize the biosphere, and you know who they are, and you know what institutions that are funding, and you know what institutions are doing the work, it's kind of easy to keep an eye on it. So I think, one of the things that's important to point out is I didn't start doing research on this. I actually started making observations. And in 2002 and 2003, it was actually really interesting because I wrote the very first bioweaponization warning document, which is a book that I have sitting right in front of me. I'll just reach down on my little table and hold it up. This book that is our security briefing on bioweapons. The one I'm holding there is from 2003, but we wrote these books routinely documenting violations of biological and chemical weapons treaties and laws and so forth. And so we wrote them, we published them. And for a lot of people, I think it comes somewhat as a surprise that I was actually setting up alarm bells for this particular situation in 2002 and 2003, when coming off of the anthrax situation, it became clear that there were more things to be concerned about than just the Defense Department's misuse and ultimately appropriation of anthrax. So in part, I would say I haven't done any research. I've just watched. And I think that's not some sort of false humility. That's actually just the case. I've known what to watch. I've known who to watch. And I've known the 4,000 plus patent filers and holders who have tried to commercialize the bioweapon called coronavirus and specifically the bioweapon called SARS. So I've been focused on that. But Shay, you ask a beautiful second question, which I really want to address. And that is, I think that all of us are here precisely for this moment in time. I feel like I'm very much prepared and equipped. I mean, I think that spending the early part of the 2000s doing biological and chemical weapons work around the world, examining what was going on, looking at proliferation, looking at who was doing, kind of what illicit activities around the world, who was financing those activities. I think having that perspective obviously prepared me precisely for this moment. But I think that if you actually examine your own life, I know, from Sovereign's journey, we were all positioned to be perfectly equipped at this moment to help, surface information and share information. And as Sovereign said, enable technology that allows us to connect. So in many respects, I would say that we were all perfectly situated for exactly where we are right at this moment. And I think that what makes my contribution in this moment interesting is that if we have a very crass view of it, we can confidently say I've been horribly ineffective because I've been trying to wake people up to this since 2003. The flip side of it is maybe it just takes that long of, wearing sackcloth and eating locusts in the wilderness before people are ready to listen. So I don't know. One way or another, I think humility is appropriate, but also I think timing and the fortuitous connections, all of these connections which bring us into this moment, are just perfect evidence of the world has conspired to equip us to deal with what we're facing at this moment right now with a full complement of capabilities.
That's huge. And I love your perspective on the unraveling world at our fingertips. It seems so much is changing at a rapid rate these days. And we're just navigating and collaborating and working together to be able to support one another to get that message out there further. And something that I've felt inspired by is, the way that you just so gracefully kind of align yourself with people who share a similar mission. You've been doing it for so many years, and here we are, connecting with people like Sovereign and Sasha Stone, and those who are really putting the message out there and reaching the people, because now more than ever, it's very relevant that we all, work together and come together, because there's huge power in numbers ultimately. Sovereign, did you want to share just a piece on what you guys have done in the past and potentially the future connections that are coming into manifestation and the creations that are coming forth?
Yeah, totally. Well, one particular question that I would ask, second to that of David, is that through the Focus on Fauci event, you delivered this beautiful research. I call them the Fauci leaks. Document. And I've just been going through my files and figuring out, because I had to something working in this realm of kind of going in against the distorted fantasies of the powers that were. I have found that my technology, because I also used it intensely, hasn't always kept up. So right after the Fauci event, my whole laptop just got taken out, and so I wasn't prepared for that or backed up, and so I have the curiosity if there is that file folder still online where people that may find that, so we can follow up in an email and point it out, or maybe you have a web address for it.
I could actually pop it into the chat, and that way people can lay hands on it. The reason I'm suggesting to do this is the official dossier is published under the Creative Commons license, so everybody anywhere in the world is able to get it for free. There have been a couple of people who've tried to commercialize it, but what I'll do, I think I'll do this. I'm saying I'm going to do it, but then I'm trying to figure out why I can't. I'll just put it in the private chat, and then Shay, you can share it. But there's the link to the Fauci dossier. You can share it in the broader chat. But that document, just for everybody's reference, that document is about 25 or 26 pages of my kind of substantive report on the felonies and the various civil crimes that have been perpetrated since 1999. But Sovereign, the balance of that document, which is actually quite a substantial document, the balance of that document is every single patent since 1998 that has been filed on the bioweapons of the coronavirus manipulation. So there's over 4,000 documents in there. It's actually quite a hefty thud value. If you want to drop something on somebody's desk and you print it out and have the ability to drop that information for people to have a closer examination. There's a couple things that are critical, but every time we talk about the Fauci dossier, I find myself compelled, and I'll just do it again because I can't help myself. Whenever we bring it up, I think it's really critical that we kind of recapitulate probably the most important line inside of that Fauci dossier, which was the quote from Peter Daszak that was at the National Academy of Sciences in 2015, published in the February 2016 Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. And what he said, just to make it abundantly clear, and I know we're on general, so you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to use one term that will only be in code, but it says to sustain the funding beyond the crisis, we need to increase the public understanding for the need for medical countermeasures, such as a pan-coronavirus injection. I think we can say injection. A key driver is the media, and the economics will follow the hype. We need to use that hype to our advantage to get to the real issues. Investors will respond if they see profit at the end of the process.
Yeah,
that's a quote, and that's a quote from the money launderer in chief, the guy who was the veterinarian who allegedly discovered that we had some sort of novel coronavirus in 2019. But that quote from 2015, where listen, we can't make this up. This is actually the admission of the crime by the criminal himself. This is actually stating that we need to create a media hype, and we need that media hype to be used for our advantage. Investors will follow if they see profit at the end of the process. Every time I am confronted with a person who says to me, well, Dave, you may be going out on a limb. That's kind of an accusation. That's kind of a conspiracy. Ladies and gentlemen, that's actually a bank robber showing up with the bank's bag of money and me accusing them of robbing the bank whose name is on the bag of money. Like, that's what that is. That's not a theory. That is a criminal conspiracy. It's a criminal conspiracy that we'll go to in the private session here. We'll go into what their plan was, the fact that this plan was written and published and signed by the perpetrators in 2011. So you're going to see all of this on the show, people. So just, hang with us. But it's so important to understand that these aren't allegations. This is admissions. These are admissions made by the people who are, in fact, perpetrating this crime across the world. And so, yeah, Sovereign, when you have that kind of information and it is proliferating all over the world, what stands between us and really bringing this plan undone is if people of goodwill fail to act with this information. We have the information, we have the ability to move. The Fauci dossier is publicly available, published for the benefit of humanity, kind of thing, and we just know that this is a simple mathematic game of how many at bats are we going to make? How many are we going to make before we finally get to a tipping point where enough people share this information and call for some accountability? So I'm excited and Sovereign, with the Focus on Fauci event, as we actually started bringing a sharp focus, so much so that if you look at the actual Newsweek publication yesterday, and you heard me say that correctly, Newsweek, the mainstream media Newsweek, just published an op-ed which is scathing and in fact lays out an enormous amount of the information that I actually articulated in the Fauci dossier. Obviously a year later, but who cares? We're making progress. We've got mainstream media now publishing op-eds that in fact recite many of the things that I put in that dossier a year ago. And so far, as you know, we just have been vindicated on every statement we've made, that all of them have turned out to be materially substantiated now by the release of emails and documents and everything else. So yeah, it was an amazing event and grateful for the work you did to make it happen.
It was, as I said, just such a privilege to be able to be in a team that has the capacity to make it all work. And it was a very short window of time to compress it all. But it's amazing when we come together for a common good and a common goal. I personally sense, Shay, that this conversation is starting to heat up a bit, and we've all had the strikes on accounts and so forth. So I very much am interested to take this conversation onto the Earth Heroes platform, to lean into some questions that I particularly have, that may be a little bit speculative, but I think that your insight on this field is so interesting. And one of them is that I hear a lot of talk, a lot of people have a lot of armchair opinions and want to see a light at the end of the tunnel. And so the conversation has kind of reached my ear several times that Australia is the final frontier, and last year I was very clear that it was really all going to come down in America, in terms of where the turning point, the shifting point out of this kind of dystopia is being activated. But we may just want to jump into the private channel for that, because I think we're going to uncover a few words and sentences that are much more appreciated there.
Yeah, well, and Sovereign, I think it's great to point out, and everybody who's watching, we have done our very best to make sure we're careful, we're thoughtful, Our goal is to have our voice as accessible as possible. And as you know, we have navigated the worlds of our social media channels with some aplomb so far. I'm always careful. But the great news is we still do have an enormous amount of content